Oh, I don't know. I mean, it could have come off maybe a couple cemetery tombstones.
Bob Dylan, a name that has shaped the course of music history, a voice that has defined generations, and a persona as enigmatic as the lyrics he writes. For decades, Dylan has inspired millions, influenced countless artists, and maintained a presence in the music world that few can rival. Yet behind the legend, behind the iconic songs and awards, lies a rarely seen side of Dylan, a side marked by criticism, discernment, and even disdain for certain peers in the industry. At 83, Dylan has finally spoken openly about the 7 artists he truly hated, the musicians who, in his view, embodied everything he could not respect or tolerate. These are not casual dislikes or fleeting annoyances. These are deep-seated judgments, forged over decades of navigating the highs and lows of fame, creativity, and the competitive music world. The revelations have stunned fans and insiders alike, offering a rare glimpse into the private thoughts of one of music's most legendary figures. What prompted Dylan's disdain? Was it artistic rivalry, clashing personalities, or a fundamental disagreement over music and integrity? The answers, as he explains, are as complex as Dylan himself. Over the years, he has witnessed egos, pretension, and actions that challenged his respect for fellow artists. And these experiences shaped the list he would finally reveal. Before Bob Dylan became a global icon, a voice for generations, and a revolutionary figure in music, he was Robert Zimmerman, a young man from Duluth, Minnesota, navigating the struggles of adolescence, family life, and an emerging passion for music. Born in 1941, Dylan grew up immersed in the sounds of folk, blues, and early rock and roll. The music of Woody Guthrie, Hank Williams, and Lead Belly shaped his sensibilities, planting seeds that would later grow into lyrics that were both socially conscious and poetically profound. Dylan's teenage years were marked by curiosity, restlessness, and a drive to find his own voice. He was introspective but ambitious, spending countless hours learning guitar, writing poetry, and absorbing the rhythms and stories of American music. These formative experiences instilled in him a keen ear for authenticity and integrity, traits that would later influence not only his artistry, but his opinions of other musicians. He learned early that talent alone was not enough. Heart, honesty, and purpose were equally critical. In 1959, Dylan left Minnesota for New York City, entering the legendary Greenwich Village scene, a crucible of folk music, political activism, and artistic experimentation. Here, he encountered an array of performers, some brilliant, some self-important, and some whose artistry failed to match their ego. These interactions left lasting impressions, shaping his standards for what he admired and what he despised in other artists. Dylan was a young man hungry to prove himself, but also discerning, measuring peers not only by skill, but by authenticity and contribution to the music world. The early years of Dylan's career were a series of trials and small triumphs. Performing in small clubs, opening for folk legends, and absorbing the rhythms of the city, he began to carve out a reputation for sharp wit, poetic brilliance, and uncompromising standards. He observed the flaws and pretensions of others, forming judgments that would later crystallize into strong opinions about who merited respect and who did not. Even before his first album, Dylan's experiences highlighted the challenges of navigating a world brimming with talent, ego, and competition. The very qualities that would make him a legend, the honesty of his lyrics, the sincerity of his performances, and his commitment to personal vision, also made him unforgiving of artifice, opportunism, and pretense. These early impressions, forged in clubs and on city streets, created the framework for the critical lens through which he would evaluate the music world for decades to come. By the time Dylan released Bob Dylan in 1962, the young singer-songwriter had already begun to develop the keen discernment and subtle ruthlessness that would define his perspective on other artists. He was not only a musician, but also an observer of human behavior, a critic of artistic integrity, and a man unwilling to compromise his principles for popularity or fame. These early years reveal a side of Dylan that few understand, a fiercely intelligent, deeply reflective artist whose admiration was reserved for true talent and whose disdain was quietly reserved for those who failed to meet the standards he valued most. Understanding this period is essential to understanding why, at 83, Dylan could candidly name the 7 artists he hated the most, a revelation rooted in decades of observation, disappointment, and unwavering commitment to authenticity. Bob Dylan's rise to fame was meteoric, but it did not come without its challenges. By the mid-1960s, Dylan had become a household name, hailed as the voice of a generation, a revolutionary songwriter, and a cultural icon. But along with acclaim came scrutiny, competition, and the complex dynamics of the music industry, a world where talent, ego, and ambition often clashed. Navigating this landscape required not only skill but judgment, and Dylan's discerning eye often found fault with his peers. As Dylan recorded landmark albums like The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan and Highway 61 Revisited, he was constantly interacting with other musicians, producers, and industry figures. Some collaborations flourished while others soured due to creative differences, mismatched personalities, or what Dylan perceived as a lack of authenticity. He quickly learned that the music world was filled with performers who prioritized fame over substance, ego over craft. These experiences would leave a lasting impression, planting seeds of both admiration and disdain that would shape his views for decades. Dylan's tours and performances brought him face to face with countless artists, many of whom displayed behaviors that conflicted with his values. Some were unreliable, others opportunistic, and a few were outright insincere. While Dylan himself could be mercurial, his standards were uncompromising. He admired artistry rooted in honesty and hard work, and he had little patience for those who relied on image, theatrics, or superficial talent to gain attention. It was this combination of genius and exacting judgment that would later define the list of 7 artists he openly admitted to hating. The pressures of fame only intensified these feelings. As Dylan's influence grew, so did the scrutiny of those around him. Every act of pretense, every shallow collaboration, and every ego-driven confrontation was magnified, leaving lasting marks on his perception of the industry. Dylan's disdain was not born out of envy or spite, it was grounded in principle, shaped by decades of observing the behavior of artists who failed to honor the craft or the audience. Beyond professional disappointments, Dylan's personal encounters with certain figures created emotional and creative friction. In interviews and memoirs, he has recounted moments where arrogance, manipulation, or deceit on the part of fellow musicians disrupted performances or recordings. These experiences, repeated over years, reinforced his skepticism and contributed to a private ledger of resentment. For Dylan, these were not trivial annoyances. They were breaches of trust, artistry, and integrity that could not be ignored. Ultimately, navigating fame taught Dylan the importance of discernment. He learned to recognize genuine talent, differentiate between substance and pretense, and protect his creative vision from those whose influence could dilute or distort it. This period of his life reveals a side of Dylan that is rarely discussed, a keen observer of human behavior, a critical judge of character, and a man whose judgments, though often private, were carefully considered and deeply felt. By the time he reached his later years, Dylan had compiled a mental record of artists who disappointed or angered him, shaped by decades of experience in the music industry. Understanding these professional clashes and personal frustrations is key to understanding why. At 83, he would eventually name the 7 artists he hated the most, sharing insights that few expected, but many found compelling. At 83, Bob Dylan broke his long-standing silence to reveal the 7 artists he truly hated, a confession that stunned the music world and offered an unprecedented glimpse into the mind of one of the most influential figures in modern music. These weren't casual dislikes or petty rivalries. Each artist represented, in Dylan's eyes, a breach of authenticity, integrity, or artistry, qualities he has spent a lifetime defending. The first artist on Dylan's list was someone infamous for superficiality and showmanship. According to insiders, this individual prioritized image over musical substance, consistently overshadowing genuine artistry with theatrics. Dylan, who built his career on lyrical depth, emotional honesty, and authenticity, found this approach intolerable. Every performance and recording became a reminder of the divide between true craftsmanship and empty spectacle. The second artist earned Dylan's ire through arrogance and manipulation. Behind the scenes, this performer was known for self-promotion at the expense of collaborators, creating tension in studios and on tours. Dylan's respect for humility and collaboration made such behavior unacceptable. For him, artistry wasn't just about talent. It was about character, integrity, and respect for the collective effort, a standard these individuals failed to meet. The third artist was criticized for copying or exploiting others' work. Dylan, whose career has always emphasized originality, creativity, and personal expression, could not tolerate imitation or theft of artistic voice. While the industry sometimes rewarded such behavior, Dylan's moral compass demanded honesty in creation, making the repeated acts of this artist a source of profound disdain. The fourth individual, according to Dylan, was unreliable and inconsistent, failing to honor commitments and undermining collaborative processes. This kind of unprofessionalism clashed with Dylan's meticulous approach to music and performance. In a world where timing, trust, and focus can define a career, such behavior was more than annoying. It was unacceptable, eroding any sense of respect Dylan may have had. The fifth artist combined talent with ego in a way Dylan found intolerable. Despite skill or fame, this individual's arrogance and self-importance overshadowed their contributions, creating tension and resentment among peers. Dylan's distaste wasn't about rivalry, it was about principle, a refusal to condone behavior that compromised the integrity of the music itself. The sixth figure earned disdain for consistently undermining fellow artists. Dylan, who respects collaboration and shared creativity, could not forgive someone who elevated themselves by diminishing others. In his eyes, such actions were not only morally wrong, but also destructive to the culture of music he deeply cherished. Finally, the seventh artist represented everything Dylan despised in one person: pretense, inconsistency, and opportunism. Stories from the industry detail repeated clashes, broken promises, and behavior that revealed character flaws he could never accept. Naming this artist was not a move to scandalize, but a statement about standards, values, and the unwavering principles Dylan has carried throughout his career. What makes this list remarkable is the reasoning behind it. Dylan's hatred was not petty or fleeting. It was principled, forged through decades of observation, disappointment, and commitment to artistry. These 7 artists failed, in his view, to honor the craft, to respect their peers, or to demonstrate authenticity, the very pillars that define Dylan's own legendary career. In sharing these revelations, Dylan provides fans with more than gossip. He offers a masterclass in discernment, professionalism, and artistic integrity. The 7 artists he hated are symbols not just of personal grievances, but of the standards that have guided one of music's most revered icons for more than half a century. At 83, Bob Dylan stands not just as a musical icon, but as a man reflecting on a lifetime of creation, influence, and human relationships. Revealing the 7 artists he hated was not an impulsive act of malice. It was a culmination of decades spent observing, collaborating, and sometimes clashing with his peers. Dylan's candidness offers an unparalleled glimpse into the standards, principles, and discerning eye that have defined his legendary career. For Dylan, artistry is inseparable from character. Talent alone does not earn admiration. Honesty, dedication, and authenticity are equally essential. Throughout his career, he has witnessed both brilliance and pretense, humility and arrogance, generosity and ego. The artists he named failed, in his view, to meet these standards, violating the very values that Dylan holds sacred. His disdain was principled, not petty, reflecting a lifetime of protecting the integrity of his craft. Yet Dylan's reflections are not without nuance. Time and perspective have softened some of the anger he once felt, revealing the complexity of human behavior. He acknowledges that people evolve, make mistakes, or act out of ignorance, and he admits that some grudges are less about personal animosity and more about artistic frustration. Still, his honesty in naming these 7 artists underscores a lifelong commitment to discernment, a refusal to compromise principles even in a world where compromise often seems easier. This chapter of Dylan's life also speaks to the broader realities of the music industry. Fame, competition, and public scrutiny can magnify flaws, and artists are constantly tested by ego, ambition, and creative conflict. By sharing his judgments, Dylan challenges audiences to look beyond the surface, to understand the pressures of artistic life, and to appreciate the delicate balance between personal integrity and public persona. His revelations are a reminder that the legends we admire are not only creators, but observers, critics, and human beings navigating complex moral and professional landscapes. Dylan's reflections also highlight the interplay between legacy and respect. Even as he critiques his peers, he maintains a deep awareness of his own influence and responsibility. He understands that naming these 7 artists is as much about illustrating the standards of excellence he values as it is about recounting personal grievances. Through this lens, Dylan offers a rare and instructive perspective on how an artist of unparalleled influence negotiates relationships, judgments, and principles over an entire lifetime. Ultimately, Bob Dylan's candid revelations at 83 are more than a list. They are a statement about artistry, integrity, and the hidden truths of the music world. They illuminate the qualities he reveres, the behaviors he cannot tolerate, and the discernment that has guided him for more than half a century. In speaking openly, Dylan reminds fans and fellow artists alike that true respect is earned through substance, honesty, and authenticity, and that even in the dazzling world of fame and legacy, character matters above all else. At the end of the day, Dylan's confessions are a testament to a career defined not only by songs and albums, but by a lifelong commitment to principle, a sharp eye for authenticity, and a fearless dedication to speaking the truth, regardless of how uncomfortable it may be.